Hello and welcome back to the Foyht Podcast, where we like to unbox holistic therapies and see what different practitioners are doing in all the different areas of health and well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. We're open to everything, we're interested in everything, and it's great to discuss things with all of our members, as well as other people connected with the world of health and well-being. Today we've got Robin Lansman, and it's great to have you here, Robin. Robin is a prominent figure in British healthcare with over 35 years of clinical and strategic experience as a clinical doctor and a director of the Body Backup Healthcare and a former president of the Institute of Osteopathy. He has consistently operated in the intersection of patient care and professional leadership. A seasoned allied health professional and advisor to the Office of Health Improvement and Disparities. Yes. Interesting. Okay. Rob, you can tell us a bit more about that and all of these parts. It's interesting to hear all these little bits, Robin, but it would be great to have you fill it out and tell us a bit more about your story.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a clinical doctor. I'm actually an osteopath, but clinical director of my practice, Body Backup. So yeah, anyone who works with us, we try and work together to bring through some sort of ethos that we can put out there and share, so that the people working together are actually delivering something we're all on the same page about, no matter how we present our healthcare particular area of interest or specialty. So that's kind of what I do on a weekly basis, managing the team, and I'm being around, obviously doing quite a lot of other leadership roles in the past, presidential roles for the Institute of Osteopathy some years back, and also board roles on quite a few health charities as well, which is kind of adds, if you like, to the portfolio, but also to the networking and meeting a lot of very interesting and very able people on different boards that I've come across and worked with for quite some period as well. So it's a nice variety portfolio, one might say, career, as many people have these days.
Absolutely, that's it. There used to be a time when people would go into one area and that was what you were doing. You're just down that line, you became a teacher and you were a teacher for life, but many people go in lots of different areas now, and the portfolio can expand with sections and areas in all sorts of interesting and, may I say, weird and wonderful parts of life. Wonderful. Yeah. It's interesting to see a bit more in the bio that you sent to me, that you've been a frequent media commentator, and we've been connected with you in Foyt previously, with you coming on and talking to us on webinars about different things. But it's interesting and useful to have people in these areas, especially someone like yourself, having been in different positions in different businesses and companies and organisations in healthcare, willing and able to step out into media to explain how things work from the inside across different areas, because people are quite good at their own specific niche, their own specific corner of health, but actually getting an overall holistic idea and impression is, I suppose, it's part of what we're trying to do here at Foyt, and it's useful to have people like yourself stepping into that world and into that role and giving contextual information.
I think probably the word that is used often is called silos of care. So a lot of people do have their specialties, but they don't really connect terribly well with other practitioners. So in the NHS and other circles I've worked in, this is something that various groups are trying to build allied healthcare professionals, as osteopaths are, to try and connect more with others, so that we know how each other works and we can cross-refer, which is part of really what it's about. But you do have to know what your colleagues are doing and how they approach things, and I think that interpersonal connection professionally makes for a very good useful way of referring patients usefully between other healthcare professionals, rather than just passing them on with no connecting knowledge, and that leaves people even more lost, and that's something that happens an awful lot, unfortunately, in healthcare still these days.
Yeah, it really can be, and in business areas as well. It's just sort of like, oh, you need a builder. Okay, here's so and so. Here's Joe Bloggs down the road. But it's like, oh, do you need a builder? Do you need a bricklayer? Do you need a roofer? And
well, it's someone you trust. I mean, to be honest with you, it's a bit about that, but it's also about who you trust. And I know the network in my practice is very much about referrals, word of mouth recommendations, and me trusting another healthcare professional, how they work, how they operate, is absolutely imperative before I'd refer one of my patients on for some other service or some other type of care. So yeah, I mean it's a kind of trust circle as well as actual bricks and mortar who does what, because it's how they approach it that to me is even more important.
Quite so, quite so. Interesting. Yeah, I believe you've been in looking at leadership a lot over your experience, because of course being in a leadership role in different organisations, you're now looking at healthcare and leadership and how those worlds collide and how they're actually not just different sections, they're interconnected and woven together, and how important it is to be aware of both. Would you like to just start off
Well, yeah,
where you've been coming from with that?
yeah. I think partly it's come through different experiences, but certainly trying to influence different things within a profession, become part of committees, and then grow through that, and perhaps get elected to become, as I have, vice president and president of various organisations, is something that could be some people's interest and area of expertise. Other people might look at the way they run their practice as a leadership role. So the fact that dealing with patients every day, even one-to-one, you're actually dealing with very much leading by example, and trying to advocate different health routes for people. So you're actually acting as a leader, even if you're just one-to-one with the patient. It's not all about the big stuff. I've done lots of press and media and BBC interviews and all sorts of stuff as press spokesperson. But at the same time, that doesn't float everybody's boat, and it's not so always easy for everyone to do. But part of sharing your health message and advocating, in a sense, for your patients and finding good referral routes or trying to find things to help them out, that's all about being a health leader. So it's kind of part of the role, but a lot of people, I think, when they qualify, don't realise that's kind of what they're doing. It's very much a collaborative process. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Interesting. Yeah, because leadership is always it's a person on person thing. We're not led by a machine. The machine is a tool we use. We're led by individuals, by people we look up to. And a doctor is of course somebody that you look to for advice, but if he's not taking care of himself, why would you take his advice?
Or even an osteopath. I mean, in this instance, people come to their trusted professional, and I get them all the time, who may not want me to treat them, but just want, because of the training I have, I know I'm a first contact practitioner. I know that I can diagnose from scratch without a referral from their doctor, and we actually get people who will come and actually want an opinion and a view on their health, let alone the specific back pain, neck pain, whatever it is that might be troubling them. So it becomes very much about also transparency and honesty and openness, all these leadership principles which are often thrown at, well, people who often disappoint us in the public arena, but nevertheless within healthcare, it's a great thing to be able to be seen as a trusted person, resource, professional for people to go to. And I think that's something that's not just about business, but it's very much about an ethical stance. So that's kind of one of the leadership skills. When I'm teaching undergraduates about this, that's kind of one of the areas we explore heavily. And I think even actually, mentoring and coaching others, as I've done other healthcare professionals of all different types, paramedic, midwife, who else? Occupational therapist. So I've mentored and coached quite a few, and other osteopath students as well. But it's quite an interesting process just to see where people's thinking's going as they're learning all the hard stuff to become that professional. But then there's other stuff to deal with, a bit like driving a car. Changing gear isn't driving. Looking out the window is driving. Because that's when you don't hit other people. that's more important in a sense. The basics of changing gear and steering or whatever it is have to be done, but then you actually get into the real world, and it's a different process, different set of skills that have to also be grown and developed, which takes some effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting, and the interpersonal skills is something that's a real. It's a necessary set of skills, and that I appreciate that you're putting in that time for other professionals, giving them that mentoring and giving that guidance, because unless you get that guidance, unless you get that process of being the leader and the example and interactions with your patients, your clients, you're not going to. well, you will eventually learn how to do it, but you're going to make some foibles and some slip-ups on the en route. So having a bit of mentoring on this is the sort of thing you want to do, this is how you want to follow this process is really useful and really valuable.
Do you know, it's interesting because when you treat people or you see people at the beginning, you sometimes wonder at the beginning why people don't come back. And perhaps you haven't had a dialogue that said, well, this is the end of what we can do for you, or they're not happy with something. That's the growth. The growth is actually about actually never having an ending that doesn't have a, can I say, discussion or purpose behind it. So it's not done by surprise. People will say, you know, I need to try something else, or I will say, perhaps we're reaching the maximum I can do for you. So that sort of dialogue is very much about letting go of some ownership, and actually that sort of feeling where things don't kind of always fit. Not everyone's going to fix everything. It's quite important to be open about that and have that dialogue. So that's quite something that takes perhaps a little bit of realization. And again, the mentoring or coaching, they're quite different animals, mentoring and coaching. If you want, we can chat about the differences in a bit, but that's definitely something that can help people build a practice, retain a practice, and do a better job and feel better at night, sleep better. You know, that they've done a great job. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'd be interested to see your professional opinion on what Tim, in even my mind, and I've been working in Foyt for over a year now, those words are basically synonymous in my mind. I can see that there probably are differences. I mean, mentoring, I suppose, is going along with more one-on-one. A coach can be of an entire team, and it's a bit more teaching and demonstrating, but then let them get on with it.
Maybe I'll give you slightly different.
Okay.
I mean, really, it is all about, I guess, a certain level, can I say, of ability, maturity, experience, meeting someone who's ready to either have a little more direction or a little less direction and a bit of open chat to develop how they want to proceed. So, so mentoring itself can be quite hands-off, but actually allow some sort of exploring. And the coaching is a little bit more, perhaps some people would say, slightly more directive on the basis of trying out ideas. So it doesn't matter how big the team is. This could be one-to-one coaching or one-to-one mentoring, or team coaching or team mentoring. So it can go in different ways. And there's different ways of applying it as well, and teaching people really how to ask for help and how to hear properly what's being suggested, and perhaps not feel too challenged or upset about people asking quite difficult questions. You know, you've got to be open to that. And that's what's going to happen, honestly, in practice of any type, any therapy, any medical intervention. There's always going to be those difficult conversations. So that's kind of something to learn from and not get defensive. I think that's one thing that can happen, again, that can prevent one moving forwards as a professional. So, yeah.
Quite so, and even stepping into a new career, I when I was young used to struggle with just having the confidence and comfort to say, okay, someone's suggesting a slightly different direction. That would always make me feel defensive of what was wrong with the idea I had of going in this direction in my career, and it almost got to the point where I couldn't decide which path because there were so many different ideas. Whereas actually, if you're open to there are new ideas, they've got a different perspective, and once you take them all the perspectives, you can choose one and move forward in it. And it's okay for those ideas to be different.
Different and then change as well. So I think open to change, I think, might be another. It's not just accepting or rejecting or perhaps saying you agree to differ, but perhaps evolving and learning through that process, because good questions are hard to find. And actually that's the really interesting part about even doing a case history with a patient. There's a dialogue, and it is very much digging deep into things that perhaps they've made assumptions about, or perhaps they've misunderstood, or some things are counterintuitive, and that's always very difficult. The thing you think you're doing that's helping isn't, and yet you can't figure out why, because it must be the right thing. That's the kind of thing that happens with a lot of professionals, and indeed a lot of patients as well. So
absolutely, and the more time you invest in something, the more sort of sunk cost fallacy comes in play, and you think, I've spent 20 minutes, I've spent an hour on this, I need to just keep, surely it'll work eventually. It's like, actually, put it down, let's step back, let's try something new.
Yeah.
So,
To give you an example on that, if that isn't changing direction a little bit, but I mean, even the example,
Why
you
not?
spend a lot of money on a mattress that you've been recommended by a shop to buy, and it's actually not helping your back, and yet you want to
Yeah.
believe it is because it cost you so much money, and then eventually, had they come along and asked the question, I do get patients who I encourage to discuss their footwear, their choice of exercise, their new bed, how they're operating, the new pillow, all sorts of things we get to talk about if they want to. And surprisingly,
Right.
even when that's been offered, they unfortunately not always take the opportunity to actually make those choices that aren't more expensive. They're just the right choices, as against sometimes perhaps the salesman induced stuff that might happen when they actually just go to a shop or buy online. So but the offer's there, and actually a lot of people do actually check in with me and make sure they're kind of trying something that's the more sensible approach for their needs. Yeah, directly.
Right, so yeah. And I mean, when you're looking at a mattress, you're thinking, okay, it's this sort of figure. I mean, it's a pair of shoes. I don't know if I've ever spent £50 on a pair of shoes. Some people spend a lot more than that. I'm just like, it's something on my feet, so my feet don't get dirty. That's all I care about.
Yeah,
That's where I
well,
am.
that might work for some people. It may not be may not be a problem, but if you know
No.
there are problems with your hips, with your knees, back, da da da, then that might be a review time to say, hang on a sec, am I doing the right thing here? So that might be when you might
Exactly.
think, actually, and it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot more. You just have to pick the
No.
right make and the right design and so on. So yeah, it's not always
No.
about how
Yeah.
much money you're spending.
Yeah, quite so. And I suppose it could even be that something's a bit cheaper. Just sort of sometimes for some people, it might just be the look of the thing. Whereas actually, if that one looks nicer, but actually
Well,
it's
other
been
people,
designed
things
to
go
look
in
nicer.
trends. Things go in trends,
Yeah.
and people's
Yeah.
footwear, and what's the latest trainer, that is the one that everyone's wearing, which there is one that's been going on for a while. But suddenly people are saying it's not so great, and it was never that great, but everybody was buying it. So, that's,
Yes.
and sometimes that's quite hard to crack into because, if you think about being a leader, people will listen to a point, but if the herd are doing something, they might still follow the herd. That's something to accept and let go of, and not celebrate too much when they come back to you and say, well, I didn't do it, but that will be what happens quite often. So
Understand, yeah. So yeah, as you're advising, it's not just a here's a solution. As you say, it could, we're talking about this, talking about that, talking about the other, the mattress, the pillow, the shoes. It's actively seeing, okay, what's working, how can we improve things and try
well,
something
so
out.
that's mentoring and coaching again in a different vein.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is the person willing to be directed a little, or are they very much going to discuss their own ideas and make their own idea anyway? And it's a bit of the two in that case, because you can't, make people do anything, and it is really opening up ideas and thoughts for them to explore themselves and give them some tools to do that. So that could be a sort of approach you might apply to a patient directly rather than in an interprofessional capacity. Yeah, so there's similar crossovers, but in slightly different domains between
Yeah.
how people communicate in different ways. So it's kind of
Interesting.
all
Yeah.
part of the rich mix of being a health professional and seeing people on a daily basis. I think doing that makes it stay alive and stay healthy, because otherwise it's robotic, and some practitioners do very much disconnect and perhaps deliver their care, and others are much more connected in the way they operate. And I think that's perhaps down to individuals and down to different professions, perhaps. But yeah, I mean it's a choice also for a practitioner to work a particular way if they want to or can. So yeah.
Right so, right so. Yeah. If a practitioner has been going down a particular way and got used to doing things in a particular process, I can imagine it can be rather difficult. And how could it be? Are there any processes or recommendations you could give to help them make a shift from sort of a more passive, here's a solution,
Well,
cookie
ask
cutter?
themselves how they're feeling at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, what's this doing for them? Not just earning money and being busy, but actually, are they feeling satisfied in their work? And not everybody sits down and has a think about that. They're just happy to be busy, and so that is something. But I think, I think after a time, and it might take some people more time or less to think, I want more from this as a process and a connection with people, and more satisfaction from work. I think people say that about all sorts of work, but in healthcare it can be very draining if you're not offering something that you really feel ownership of and connected to. And that connection with your patients and how you operate is extremely It doesn't have to be draining. It can be extremely invigorating at the same time as well, by those connections one makes with people. So I don't know. I think it is a process. I mean, not everyone, for example, in healthcare is going to say, I've had this back pain for 5 years and finally something made me do it this week, whatever it is, to book and sort it out. And we get lots of people who've been pondering and not deciding what to do. And in the same way, practitioners might work a certain way for years and suddenly think, something isn't right for me. You know, they might go on holiday and reflect and come back. There's a change in life. There's a change in pace. And actually, I think that happens a lot with patients as well. There's something going on in their life. They might have suffered a loss. They might be on a long holiday, have a break, and suddenly think, this is why I needed that break, to reflect on how I'm operating. So people do all sorts of things that suddenly trigger that kind of change and going to seek help, or even seeking a mentor or a coach. I get people who speak to me and they suddenly made a change in their minds that needed some guidance and they wanted to be helped. So I'm open to that as well. If anyone's interested in that, they can contact me, and and that can be a one-to-one arrangement and done flexibly. And it really can be very fulfilling when someone's ready to make a change. Otherwise, that interaction ain't going to be happening. So
no, quite so. Yeah, and having a mentor or somebody there with you when you're getting to a point where you know that, okay, there's some sort of transition, I need to change something here. Having an external point of view, giving that mentor, just not necessarily giving this is the solution or this is a solution, but giving the openness and the space in which they can search out for a road forward or a change themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and
have you got any? Yeah, just explore ideas. Yeah. Have you got any programs or any setup of how you're helping and guiding? You've mentioned you're mentoring different people. Have you got a...
Well, currently I've had a pause from that, but when I have been doing it, I go through phases where I'll have people where I'm actually connecting into and supporting them. So it's normally done, there's normally a fact finder to start with, where we'll actually have a longer meeting, perhaps an hour and a half or so. And then after that, it's shorter sessions, but spaced out over weeks and then perhaps months. So we can check in and see what projects, and we use various different models, different goal setting, different reflection tools, different communication tools, so that those things are explored as we go through the process. And so that there's always a chance for that reflection space in between sessions. And that's the point of how long individually do people need between sessions to have time from work and family and life to have that reflection space, because they do have to give themselves some space. So therefore, it's no point doing something all in 2 days. It's got to be done perhaps over some weeks or months to make it actually work well, and then that actually keeps it fresh and keeps people actually coming back with new stuff that's been sort of rolling around in the background in between sessions. So I find that much more rewarding. And also the other thing is not throwing out everything and starting again. You've just got to repick and be selective. It's a bit going back to the patient example. They may want to fix everything themselves. They've looked it up online. They've bought the bed. They've bought the shoes. They've done this. They've done that. They've been to the gym, and they're still in pain.
Yes.
So something hasn't fixed everything, and there's something in a misunderstanding somewhere that has to be picked out from all these things that they've spent already a lot of money on, changes they've made, that haven't actually given them what they need. And I think that's a very good marry up with what the coaching or mentoring might be for someone. They may come in thinking they want X, but go out actually with Y. You know, it may not be what they expect, and where the changes are for what they learn about themselves may well be taking them in unexpected and quite exciting directions, which will give them a lot more zest for life again when things have got a little bit, flatlined for them in their careers. Or they're new. I mean, it could be they're very new and still don't know where they're going. I mean, the college process of teaching doesn't prepare them for the big wide world, and making better decisions early on is going to save them time and probably money and effort and energy and exhaustion and stress later on down the line. So, yeah.
Okay. So as sort of a final thought as we wrap up then, what would be sort of a little piece of advice you'd give to someone that's starting out on that process, becoming a new healthcare professional, jumping into this whole world, and what sort of a piece of advice you'd give them to help them direct themselves forward in a good way?
Well, I think feeling grounded, I know it sounds very holistic, but I think feeling grounded and content is a good reflection point. So if you can keep asking yourself whether that is how you're feeling about your day and about your week and about your month, that is also, that's a good point to start the day. And maybe giving yourself that little bit of reflection time, get in a bit early and give yourself some time to actually contemplate, and actually maybe make some notes on some thoughts that may not be in a particular order, but might just be at random things that you're a little bit discontented with or could do better on, or just reflections, so that then you've got some tools to start with, perhaps a meeting, a mentoring session, where you can say, I've been thinking this, I've been thinking that. Because otherwise we're digging out stuff from nowhere. It's worth finding a pond with fish in before you start fishing, if you know what I mean. So that would be something. I think it sounds kind of obvious, but I think quite a lot of people get so busy rushing into their practice and trying to build a practice and keeping a practice that they do forget that time to allow for themselves to grow and evolve and contemplate. So that would be my kind of best tip, in a sense, for anyone in healthcare. They'll do a better job at the end of the day if they can do that for themselves as well. So it's something I try and do regularly, and get in a little early some mornings and actually have half an hour extra just to kind of spend a bit of time thinking how I'd like it to go today, and perhaps try and do better. So that's hope that's helpful.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something that one could take away in healthcare, but that's applicable in any other area of life as well. So I appreciate that. That'll be useful for me, and I'm sure it'll be useful for many listeners as well. So, well, thank you very much, Robin. It's been great speaking with you today.
Pleasure. No, absolutely great. Take care.
I hope to have you on us again, and we can speak about something else.
Okay, cool.
Bye now.
Bye.